The first thing people noticed in the fall of 1967 wasn't the sound, it was the smoke, a thin grey ribbon rising against a Nebraska sunrise, drifting over the cornfields of Harlan County like a ghost that refused to leave. And everyone knew exactly who it belonged to. Charlie Hayes. While other farmers roared down County Road 17 in brand new tractors with chrome grills and factory radios, Charlie's old red Farmall coughed and rattled like a stubborn mule refusing retirement. Stay with me until the end. Before we begin, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. Men laughed when they passed him. They didn't try to hide it. Still running that antique. You know they've got tractors with power steering now, Charlie. You can't farm the future with museum pieces. Charlie never answered. He didn't argue, didn't defend himself. He just kept his eyes on the furrow line ahead. Because what nobody else understood was that Charlie wasn't racing them. He was racing the bank. See, in 1938, Charlie's father borrowed money to buy 80 acres of Nebraska clay, hard land, honest land, the kind that demanded sweat before it gave back grain. When his father died in 1952, heart attack during wheat harvest, the land passed to Charlie. So did the debt, a 20-year mortgage, a signature on paper that meant the bank owned everything until the last dollar was paid. And the day they lowered his father into the cold earth behind the Methodist church, Charlie made a promise to himself, before he turned 40, that land would be his, free and clear, no liens, no signatures, no banker smiling across a polished desk. By September 1967, Charlie was 37 years old, and he had just under $8,000 left on the mortgage. 3 years early on the schedule, because while his neighbors were financing shiny machines at 5% interest, nothing down, 7 years to pay, Charlie was doing something different. He was doubling his payments, quietly. Every month, selling hogs, fixing broken engines, working nights, running equipment older than some of the kids in town, and every dollar he didn't spend on a new tractor went straight to killing that debt. But in Harlan County, debt didn't look like a burden in 1967. It looked like progress. The implement dealer in Kearney couldn't keep John Deere 4020s on the lot. International Harvester 1206 models with air conditioning were rolling off trucks like candy. Salesmen talked about horsepower the way teenagers talked about muscle cars. Modern farms require modern machines. Efficiency is everything. You can't compete with outdated equipment. And the bank loved it. Loans approved in minutes, smiling branch managers, paperwork that felt like opportunity. Instead of obligation, Charlie watched it all from his usual booth at the Longhorn Cafe, coffee, black eggs over easy. Listening to men brag about payments they hadn't even started making yet. They called it growth. Charlie called it chains. Now, here's what I want you to think about. If you were 37 years old, 3 years away from owning your land outright, would you risk it? Would you gamble that freedom for comfort? Because that's what the pressure felt like. Comfort. A tractor that didn't shake your bones, hydraulics that lifted twice the load, speed, status, respect. And respect matters in a small town, especially when you're the only one still driving something, built when Truman was president. The first crack in the illusion came quietly. Late September, Dale Mortenson's brand new John Deere 4020 cut too tight around a corner and tore 30 yards of Charlie's fence apart. Posts splintered, wire twisted. Like a snake, Dale stepped down from his air-conditioned cab annoyed, not embarrassed. Fence was probably rotten anyway. Charlie examined the damage. "Treated oak," he said softly. "Put it up myself in '59. There was a moment there. Test. Dale could have apologized, could have owned it. Instead, he said, "I'll send my boy over." Charlie shook his head. "You broke it. You fix it." Silence, because something had shifted. This wasn't about a fence anymore. It was about pride, about modern versus old, about who mattered more. Dale didn't show up. Charlie fixed it alone, and by Saturday morning, the story was circulating at the cafe. Charlie the stubborn fool, Charlie the relic, Charlie the man too poor to modernize. Funny thing about ridicule, it only hurts when you're unsure. Charlie wasn't unsure, because every time he mailed that double mortgage payment, he felt something no new tractor could give him. Control. Then November came. Warm rains, mud like glue. Fields too soft for heavy machinery. Farmers panicked. They had winter wheat seed bought and paid for, thousands of dollars sitting in barns, and in a rush to beat the freeze, they pushed their expensive new tractors into fields that weren't ready. Ray Kellerman buried his International to the axles. Transmission ruined, $150 tow bill. Dale's 4020 bent its front axle trying to muscle through a soft patch. Hydraulic. Lines cracked, repair costs stacking up, machines designed for power, sinking under their own weight. Meanwhile, Charlie had planted his wheat weeks earlier. His lighter Farmall didn't compact the soil. He knew every soft spot on his land by memory. His wheat was already sprouting green when the frost hit. No one mentioned it at the cafe, but they noticed. Here's the part most people miss. Charlie's advantage wasn't the tractor, it was discipline. He wasn't trying to outwork the weather, he was working with it, and while others were calculating loan, payments and repair estimates, Charlie was calculating months until freedom. Then December brought something no one expected. The bank raised interest rates. Payments jumped 15 to 20% overnight. For farmers stretched thin on equipment loans, it was a punch to the gut. For Charlie, it was something else, a deadline. If he didn't eliminate the mortgage before the higher rates locked in, he'd lose momentum, lose the promise, lose the timeline. He had 8 months to find nearly $8,000, 8 months to finish what his father started. Most men would have panicked. Charlie didn't. He did something smarter. He turned skill into leverage. All those modern tractors breaking down. They needed fixing. Dealers charged a fortune. Charlie charged half cash, same-day repairs. Word spread fast. The relic became the most valuable mechanic in the county, because here's the irony nobody saw coming. The man mocked for outdated equipment, understood machines better than anyone driving the newest ones. By February, he'd earned thousands. By spring, the mortgage balance was cut nearly in half, and that's when resentment turned into something darker. Because there's nothing more dangerous than a man who gambled on pride and sees someone else winning quietly. Dale Mortensen started watching Charlie, not laughing anymore, studying him. And in his mind, this wasn't about tractors, it was about status. Charlie wasn't supposed to win. The guy with the old Farmall wasn't supposed to outlast the guy with the 4020. That wasn't how progress worked, or so they thought. And what Dale decided to do next would test whether freedom was stronger than envy. By May of 1968, Charlie Hayes had cut his mortgage down to $1,800, $1,800, after 15 years of payments, after droughts and thin harvests and broken parts welded back together. Because new ones were too expensive, $1,800 stood between him and freedom, and that number spread through Harland. County like a rumor nobody wanted to believe. They didn't announce it. Charlie never bragged. But small towns have a way of knowing things. Farmers talked while waiting on feed orders. Mechanics talked while passing tools. The bank teller mentioned it to her cousin. Charlie Hayes is almost done. And that's when something inside Dale Mortensen began to rot. Because Dale wasn't almost done. Dale was drowning. The 4020's repair bill from the fall mud disaster had eaten into his reserve. The interest rate adjustment pushed his equipment. Payment higher, fuel costs were up, hay prices unstable. And the worst part? He couldn't admit he'd made a mistake. Not publicly. Not to the men at the cafe who had once admired his shiny machine. So, when he heard that Charlie was only 1 in 800 away from owning his land free and clear, it didn't feel inspiring, it felt humiliating. The man he'd mocked was about to win, and Dale needed that to stop. He started small, petty, strategic. He went to the county commissioners, filed a complaint, said Charlie was running an unlicensed repair, business out of agricultural land, unfair competition, liability risk, zoning violations. He dressed it in civic language, made it sound responsible. But underneath, it was revenge. If Charlie couldn't fix tractors, he couldn't. Earn that final 1-800, and if he couldn't earn it, the bank would adjust rates again, time would stretch, momentum would die, the promise would break. That was the plan. The county sent Ed Winters to talk to Charlie. Ed didn't want to be there. Retired farmer, knew the difference between greed and grit, but rules were rules. Technically, Ed said, shifting his hat in his hands, you need a variance. Charlie nodded. When's the meeting? 2 weeks. 2 weeks where Charlie couldn't take new repair jobs, 2 weeks of stalled income, 2 weeks closer to harvest, 2 weeks closer to losing leverage. Now here's the thing about men who build their lives on discipline. When you block one road, they don't panic, they look for another. Charlie didn't complain, didn't confront Dale. He simply doubled down on the work already booked. 16-hour days. Farming at dawn, repairing engines under a hanging bulb until midnight, grease under his nails. Ledger open on the kitchen table each night, balance shrinking, slowly, steadily, like a fuse burning towards something permanent. The Planning Commission meeting in June wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, uncomfortable. Small room in the courthouse basement. 20. Farmers sitting in folding chairs. Dale dressed in a sport coat like he was arguing a Supreme Court case. Charlie in clean work pants and boots. No papers, no speech, just truth. When asked why he was fixing tractors, Charlie didn't dodge. My father borrowed money for our land in 1938. He died before paying it off. I promised I would. I owe $1,800. Silence filled the room because everyone there understood something deeper than zoning. They understood legacy. They understood debt. They understood promises made to men buried in cold soil. Dale argued regulations, fees, liability, standards. The commissioners looked at Charlie, then at Dale. And in that moment, something subtle happened. They saw the difference between a man building something and a man protecting ego. The variance passed, temporary approval through September. 3 months. Enough time to finish. 4 votes to 1. Dale's was the only no. And outside in the parking lot, farmers lined up to schedule repair work, not because they hated Dale, but because they trusted Charlie. Trust is earned in silence, and Dale felt that shift like a knife. By July, Charlie's mortgage dropped to $900. By mid-August, it was under $500. The bank ledger told a story nobody could argue with. The old Farmall kept running, steady, predictable, like its owner. And then the fire happened. It was hot that Sunday, too hot for patience. Dale was cutting alfalfa with the 40-20, pushing it hard, too hard. Hydraulic line failure, fuel spray, spark, flame. In seconds, the rear of the tractor was engulfed. Dale jumped clear, the fuel tank exploded. Fire raced across dry windrows like a living thing. 20 acres burned before volunteers contained it. The tractor melted into warped metal. Insurance came Monday. The adjuster spoke calmly. Policy clause. Maintenance standards not met. Improper service intervals. Claim denied for the tractor. Covered hay. Not the machine. Dale still owed $4,000 on something now worth scrap. And here's where pride becomes dangerous, because instead of sitting in that loss, instead of asking himself hard questions, Dale needed someone to blame. He drove to Charlie's farm Tuesday afternoon, face pale, eyes wild. You did this, he said. Charlie stared at him. I never touched your tractor. If you weren't busy playing hero fixing everyone else's equipment, that machine failed because you ran it beyond its limits. That was the truth. And truth, when someone is unraveling, sounds like insult. Dale wasn't angry about the fire. He was angry about comparison. Charlie's land nearly paid off. Charlie respected. Charlie steady. Dale indebted. Dale exposed. Dale losing control. You think you're better than me? Dale spat. I think we made different choices, Charlie answered. There's a difference. But only one of them understood it, and when Dale left that shed, something inside him had crossed a line. Because humiliation doesn't stay quiet forever, it ferments. And resentment, when mixed with financial pressure, becomes volatile. He went to the bank, tried to suggest Charlie was underreporting income, tried to stir suspicion. The branch manager reviewed 15 years of flawless payments. Never. Late, never missed. Principal reduced aggressively. If anything, Charlie was the safest borrower in the county. The bank declined to interfere. That conversation broke something final in Dale, because now it wasn't about money. It wasn't about tractors. It was about identity. He had built his identity on appearing modern, successful, progressive. And now the man he dismissed as outdated was outperforming him without debt. The story in town had shifted, and men who gamble their pride on image don't handle narrative shifts well. By early September, Charlie had $3,218 in cash ready. He owed just over $400. He was days away, days, from erasing 15 years of obligation, from turning promise into ownership. And that's when desperation turned reckless. Dale stopped thinking like a farmer, stopped thinking like a father, started thinking like a cornered animal, because when someone watches the thing, they mocked succeed. It feels like exposure, and exposure feels like death to pride. What he decided to do next wasn't logical, it wasn't strategic, it was emotional, and emotion without discipline burns faster than gasoline. But we'll step into that night in Chapter 3. Because what happened under the dark Nebraska sky would define both men forever. Tell me to continue, and I'll write Chapter 3, the final escalation and resolution, even more intense than the original final chapter, with 2,000 words, September 7th, 1968. Charlie Hayes walked into the Farmers National Bank with an envelope in his jacket pocket and dust still clinging to his boots. He had counted the money 3 times that morning, not because he didn't trust himself, because he needed to feel it, the weight of it. 15 years of discipline, folded into crisp bills. When he stepped up to the counter, Kenneth Hollister looked at him over his glasses and smiled slightly. "You here to make another extra payment, Charlie?" Charlie slid the envelope across the counter. "I'm here to finish it." There's a silence that happens when a debt dies. It's not loud. There's no applause. Just paper sliding across polished wood, stamps pressing ink into documents, a pen scratching one final signature. Kenneth reviewed the ledger. Remaining balance. $412.73 as Charlie handed over the full amount. Kenneth counted it carefully, stamped the mortgage, satisfied, filed the release. Then he stood up and reached across the desk. "Congratulations, Mr. Hayes." Mr. Hayes. Not borrower, not account number. Owner. Charlie shook his hand, his grip steady, but inside something enormous shifted. For the first time since 1952, no one owned his land but him. He walked out of the bank into late summer sunlight, carrying a deed instead of a payment slip, and that piece of paper weighed more than any tractor ever could. That evening, Charlie sat at his kitchen table. The deed lay in front of him. Charles Raymond Hayes, sole owner. No liens, no encumbrances, no signature required except his own. He ran his thumb along the embossed county seal, thought about his father's hands, calloused, permanent. Grease stains, a man who never saw this day. "I kept it," Charlie whispered into the quiet room. Outside, the old Farmall rested in the shed. Red paint faded, engine rebuilt more times than anyone could count. Still there, still running, still enough. But 2 miles away, another kitchen held a different kind of silence. Dale Mortensen sat alone with a bottle of whiskey and a ledger of unpaid bills. $4,000 still owed on a tractor that was now melted scrap. Insurance denial letter folded on the table. Fuel supplier, pressing for payment. Equipment dealer refusing further credit. The cafe had gone quiet when he walked in that week. Not mocking, not laughing, just careful, and careful felt worse. He had bet everything on looking successful, and now the illusion was gone. The modern farmer, the progressive operator, the man with the future, burned down in a hayfield, and the one man he couldn't stand, debt-free, respected, steady. Dale didn't see his own choices. He saw comparison, and comparison is gasoline when pride is already lit. By the time midnight settled over Harlan County on September 11th, Dale had convinced himself of something dangerous, that Charlie's success had caused his failure, that if Charlie didn't exist, things would feel balanced again. It's amazing what a desperate mind can justify. He loaded a 5-gallon can of gasoline into his truck, drove without headlights the last stretch down County Road 17, parked a quarter-mile away. The night was moonless. Crickets. Loud in the fields. The equipment shed door was unlocked. It always was. Charlie trusted the world more than most men would. Dale stepped inside. The smell hit him first. Diesel. Metal. Old wood. He could see the shape of the Farmall in the dark. The machine that symbolized everything he hated. The reminder that restraint had beaten ego. He unscrewed the gas can, started pouring. Across the wooden wall, across the dirt floor, across the tractor's rear tire. It splashed and pooled, sharp fumes filling the shed. He imagined the fire. Imagined Charlie walking out in the morning to nothing but blackened beams and twisted iron. Imagined that look on his face. Imagined balance restored. He struck a match. And that's when the lights came on. Bright. Blinding. Dale froze. Charlie stood in the doorway, fully dressed, calm, holding a tire iron loosely at his side. "I figured you might try something," Charlie said quietly. Dale's hand trembled. The match burned down to his fingers. He dropped it instinctively. It fizzled harmlessly in. "The dirt. You've been sleeping in here?" Dale asked, voice cracking. "Barn," Charlie answered. "Last 3 nights." He stepped forward slowly. Not threatening. Not rushed. Just present. "You don't want to do this." Dale laughed, a brittle, broken sound. "You think you're better than me?" "No. You think you won. This wasn't a contest. You humiliated me. You humiliated yourself." The words weren't cruel. They were simple, and simple truth cuts deeper than insult. Dale's eyes filled with tears he couldn't control. "My tractor's gone. My credit's shot. The bank won't extend me. My son looks at me like I don't know what I'm doing." "That's because you don't," Charlie said softly. Silence, the kind that forces honesty. "You bought more than you could carry," Charlie continued. "You chased what looked impressive, not what was sustainable. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I chose different." Dale sank down onto an overturned crate, gasoline soaking into the dirt around his boots. "What are you going to do?" he asked finally. "Call the sheriff?" Charlie looked at him for a long moment. He could. Attempted arson. Jail time. Public. Humiliation. It would be justified. It would be easy, but easy isn't always right. "Do you want your son visiting you in prison?" Charlie asked. Dale flinched. "You want Billy running that farm alone?" Silence. "You want him thinking this is how men solve problems?" The weight of that landed. He hadn't thought past the fire, hadn't thought about consequences beyond. Destruction. Charlie stepped closer. "You're not my enemy, Dale. Your pride is." The words hung heavy. "You can burn my shed down," Charlie continued, "but it won't fix your decisions." Dale's shoulders shook. For the first time in months, the anger cracked, revealed something underneath. Fear. "I don't know how to fix it," he whispered. There it was. Not rage, not blame. Fear. Charlie set the tire iron down, then start smaller. Dale looked up. "Sell what you don't need. Keep what you can maintain. Work within your means. Teach your boy what restraint looks like. You think it's that simple? No, Charlie said. But it's that necessary. They spent the next hour spreading dirt over the gasoline, airing out the shed. No more shouting, no more accusations, just two men standing in the aftermath of almost irreversible damage. When it was done, Dale picked up the empty gas can. "I'm sorry," he said, barely audible. Charlie nodded once. "Go home." Dale left without looking back. He did sell land, 2 parcels the following spring, paid down the equipment note, kept one smaller tractor, older model, manageable. He swallowed pride at the cafe, stopped talking about horsepower, started talking about soil, Billy noticed, and slowly, respect returned. Not because Dale had a shiny machine, but because he stopped pretending. Charlie never told anyone what happened that night. No sheriff reports, no public story. Just quiet. Because real victory doesn't need witnesses. Years passed. The Farmall kept running until 1989. Charlie finally retired it, donated it to a small agricultural museum in Kearney. There's a plaque beside it now. It doesn't talk about heroism, doesn't talk about rivalry. It says, "This tractor represents a farmer who chose to own his land instead of impress his neighbors." That's it. Simple, true. Charlie farmed that quarter section another 30 years. No debt, no panic, no envy. When drought came, he survived because payments didn't crush him. When markets dipped, he adjusted without lenders breathing down his neck. Freedom isn't flashy. It doesn't roar down a county road with chrome and air conditioning. It's quiet. It looks like an old red tractor at sunrise. And here's the part I want you to think about. In 1967, everyone thought progress meant borrowing, upgrading, keeping. But what if progress is actually ownership? What if success isn't speed, it's control? Charlie and Dale started with the same soil, same county, same era. One chased appearance, the other chased independence. One almost destroyed himself, trying to look successful. The other built something. That couldn't be repossessed. Now ask yourself something honestly. Are you buying things to grow or to be seen? Are you taking on obligations because they're necessary or because they impress? Because the world will always tell you to upgrade, to keep up, to finance, to compete. But sometimes the strongest position is the quietest one, the man driving the old tractor. Might be the only one who still owns his ground when the dust settles. And when that dust settles, ownership speaks louder than horsepower. If this story meant something to you, if it made you question what real progress looks like, then you already understand the lesson Charlie never had to say out loud. Freedom is built in silence, and pride, when left unchecked, burns faster than gasoline. That's the difference between looking successful and being secure. And only one of those survives winter.